Welcome to my channel, where the scariest stories come to life. Before we dive into today's chilling tale, make sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications, so you never miss a story. Now, let's get into the horror. My wife and I have a pet dog named Jeter, and she's been asking me to build a doghouse for a long time. My wife's been asking, not Jeter, although I'm sure he would too if he could. I'd built a few small projects over the years and bragged about them, so my wife thought it would be a great idea for me to build the doghouse. I'm really not that good of a carpenter or anything, but I do enjoy building things if it's easy. After putting it off for a while, I had a free weekend, so on Saturday morning, bright and early, I went to Home Depot to get some supplies. I had some tools and things in my garage, but knew I'd need wood, nails, and possibly a couple of other items. The Home Depot near me opens early, around 6 a.m., and I got there probably a little after 8. It was relatively quiet, and the first thing I did was head to the wood section. As I walked, I checked my phone to remember the sizes I needed. When I arrived at the aisle, I looked up from my phone and saw that it was mostly empty. But at the far end stood a man facing the wall, really close to it like he was trying to hide his face. It was weird. I had to walk closer to him, and when I got within about 30 feet, he suddenly moved. He turned around and grabbed a piece of wood, a 2x4 about 8 feet long, and started swinging it around like a sword. I stopped, staying far enough away that he couldn't hit me. I said to him, "Careful with that thing." He froze, then pointed the wood at me. The guy was fairly short, with a beard and short dark hair. He swung the 2x4 again, back and forth, and I started to get the feeling that he wasn't joking around. Then, out of nowhere, he made a clumsy ninja-like spin, swinging the wood in the process. It wasn't impressive, but it was enough to make me think he was serious. He started walking toward me, still pointing the 2x4. At this point, I thought the guy was crazy and maybe wanted to fight. There was another 2x4 on the floor near me. I had no intention of fighting, but as he got closer, I picked it up. When he was about 10 feet away, I said, "You don't want to do this." But it turned out he did. He swung his piece of wood at me, and I raised mine to block it. When the two pieces hit, he dropped his wood, and I dropped mine. Both fell to the floor, and luckily, his swing didn't come close enough to hit me. If I hadn't blocked it, though, it might have. I immediately turned and sprinted out of the aisle. The man didn't chase me, he stayed behind, apparently guarding his wooden kingdom. I slowed down and eventually found a Home Depot employee. I told them about the man, and they said they would take care of it. I decided to keep looking for the other things I needed. After about 20 or 30 minutes of shopping, I started to head back toward the wood section. As I got closer, I saw several police officers walking through the store in a hurry, headed in that direction. I decided not to go back there and went to check out instead. I figured I could get the wood somewhere else. As I was paying, I saw even more police officers entering the store. When I left, there were about 5 police cars parked out front, all there because of the man. I later found out that he was caught and, luckily, didn't hurt anyone, though he had been threatening multiple people with pieces of wood. I ended up buying the wood at Lowe's instead, which is another home improvement store. I built the doghouse over the weekend, and Jeter loves it. Now I have a crazy story to tell people as well. I went to Home Depot several months ago and had an experience with a creepy guy. I normally don't shop at Home Depot. In fact, it was my first time there in almost a year. Normally, I stick to stores like Target, Walmart, and Home Goods. But I was looking for a new rug, as well as some things for the house, like light bulbs, which I hadn't been able to find in other stores. When I went to Home Depot, it was a little after 8 p.m., and it was dark outside. I had already been to a few other stores beforehand. Things were very quiet when I walked inside. As you know, the store is massive, but there were a few employees and shoppers around. I decided not to ask an employee for help and figured I could find things on my own, even though I wasn't that familiar with the store. As I walked around, I made my way towards the back of the store to check out the rug selection. That's when a guy came over by me. I didn't know who he was and had never seen him before. He had dark hair and was wearing jeans and a gray jacket. When he first approached me while I was browsing, I thought he might be an employee, but when I looked at him, I realized he wasn't. I didn't think much of it and figured he was just looking around in the same area. But as I left to find some light bulbs, he walked right behind me the whole time, maybe 5 feet back. He followed me the entire way. When I got to the light bulb aisle, he was right next to me, pretending to look at something. At that point, it didn't feel like a coincidence anymore. It seemed weird to me. I started walking to another aisle, and he followed. I couldn't believe it. I went down a random aisle, and of course, the man did the same. That's when I stopped, turned around, and faced him. He stopped as well and looked surprised. I asked him why he was following me around the store. He completely denied it, saying, "I'm just trying to shop," then shook his head and started looking at something random on the shelf. I was furious, but just walked away. Thankfully, he stayed in that aisle and didn't follow me again. I knew he had been following me, but I didn't know why. Maybe he thought it was funny or was trying to annoy me. Either way, I was just relieved he stopped. I finished looking around the store and spent another 10 minutes inside without seeing him. I didn't end up getting a rug, but I bought a few other small items. After checking out, I walked to my car. About halfway there, I glanced behind me, not because I heard anything, but just out of instinct, and saw the guy again. He was walking towards me in the dark parking lot, about 50 feet away. When I saw him, I rushed to unlock my car. I didn't bother looking back again because I didn't want to know if he was running after me. I just hurried to my driver's door, got inside, and put the car into drive. Fortunately, no one was parked in front of me, so I could pull out and leave quickly. I didn't see the man after that, and I don't know if he got closer or stopped following me. When I left the parking lot, I made sure I wasn't being followed home. Looking back, I have no idea who that guy was or what he wanted, but it was obvious he had been following me. For what reason, I still don't know. I haven't been back to Home Depot since. I used to work at Home Depot as a cashier, and it was a job I didn't like all that much. I'm not really into home improvement. My coworkers were nice, and I needed the job at the time, but I moved on when I found something else. I only worked there for 2 months and took the job because, out of the 3 places I applied to, they were the only ones to get back to me. The creepiest thing that ever happened while I worked there was just a couple of weeks before I quit. I was part-time and worked a few times a week, mostly at night. One evening, when I was at home, there was a knock on my front door. It was about 8 o'clock, not super late, but still an odd time for someone to show up. I saw a man at the door, someone I didn't recognize, and it made me nervous because he didn't look like a salesman or anything. He stood there for a couple of minutes before walking away. It was dark, so I didn't get a good look at him, but he seemed to be of average height and weight, with dark hair. A few days later, I was working at Home Depot when a guy came through my register. I don't remember what he was buying, but it wasn't much, maybe 1 or 2 small items. It started out as a typical interaction. I asked if he'd found everything okay and how he was doing. He said yes, and then asked me, "Why didn't you answer your door for me?" I was completely caught off guard. It took me a moment to realize what he was referring to. I asked him what he was talking about, and he told me that he had knocked on my front door. That's when I realized it was the same guy from the other night. I'm not the best at remembering people, especially since I see so many at work, but when he said that, it clicked. I said, "Oh, that was you," and asked him why he was at my house. He said he wanted to talk to me and maybe hang out. The whole thing came off as really creepy, and his speech was slurred like he might have been drunk. I asked him how he knew where I lived, and he said that he had followed me home. I asked him why, and he just said, "Because I wanted to." Then he asked if I wanted to hang out after work. I told him no and that I was busy. I also told him not to follow me home or come to my house again. He didn't really say much and just walked away, leaving the store. I was so creeped out. I couldn't believe he had followed me to my house. What if he did it again? The store was quiet, so I found my manager and told him what had happened. I just needed to talk to someone about it. My manager told me to let him know if I saw the guy again or if anything else happened. After chatting for a bit, I went back to work, but I still had a few hours left on my shift. About an hour later, the store was still pretty quiet, and I helped a few customers. Then I saw the man come back into the store. He walked toward my register almost immediately. I called for my manager as soon as I saw him. The man came up and asked what I was doing. I just told him I was working. Within seconds, my manager arrived. He asked if this was the guy, and I said yes. My manager didn't waste any time and asked the man if he had followed me home. The guy admitted it, and my manager chewed him out, threatening to call the police and ban him from the store. The man claimed he didn't want to cause any trouble and then left. I felt better afterward, but I still worried about whether he might show up at my house again. Thankfully, he didn't, and I haven't seen him since that night. I didn't work at Home Depot for long after that, and I'm grateful to my manager for stepping in. This is a really weird thing that happened to me when I went shopping at Home Depot last month. I was just picking up some things for yard work, a couple of rakes, a leaf blower, and a few other items. It was a Friday night, kind of late, maybe an hour before closing. It was fall, and my yard was getting out of control. I was in the store, comparing prices on leaf blowers. I had been in the aisle for about 5 minutes when I noticed a woman enter from the corner of my eye. She walked directly toward me, and I turned to face her, realizing she was about to say something. She greeted me and said she thought she knew me. I didn't recognize her at all and was sure we'd never met. She had blonde hair down to her shoulders and looked slightly older than me. I was polite and told her that I didn't know who she was. She said I looked very familiar. I laughed it off, saying I must look like someone she knows. She agreed and then just walked out of the aisle. I went back to looking at leaf blowers. After picking one out, I headed over to the rakes to grab a couple of cheap ones. I didn't need to browse, just get what I needed and go. But when I got there, I saw the woman again. She was standing half behind an aisle, like she was trying to hide, staring directly at me. When I noticed her, she didn't move or look away. It was strange. I walked over to grab a rake and looked at a few other things. While doing so, I noticed her again, peeking into the aisle where I was standing. The moment I looked at her, she quickly moved away. Her behavior was so odd and unsettling. After that, I decided to leave. I headed to the register, checked out, and left the store. I didn't see her again while I was inside. But once I made it out to the parking lot, which was dark and quiet, I spotted her again. She was sitting in her car, parked a little way off, just staring at me from the driver's seat. The way she stared was incredibly creepy, like she didn't care that I saw her watching me. Her eyes were locked on me the whole time as I walked closer to my car. I didn't understand why she was watching me, but she wasn't trying to hide it. I picked up my pace and quickly got into my car. Even as I got inside, she was still staring. I drove away, passing right by her car. She didn't follow me, but as I looked back, she was still watching me until I finally drove off. It was one of the strangest experiences I've had, and luckily, I haven't seen her since that night. Thanks for sticking around till the end. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to give the video a like and leave a comment with your thoughts. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a terrifying tale. See you in the next one.